Fever insider is confirming that Caitlyn Clark is fully healed over that groin injury. Guys, for this one here.
Everyone thinks they know the story of Caitlyn Clark's season. The injuries, the struggles, the haters who wrote her off. But what actually happened behind the scenes is so much stranger, so much more strategic than anything you've been told. It all started with a seemingly insignificant roster detail that changes everything for the Indiana Fever and the WNBA Finals.
Woo! Yeah! MVP! You look back at the season from hell that the Fever had. None of us expected them to be in this situation. None of us expected them to be winning a very close Game 3.
The Indiana Fever weren't supposed to be here. Not this year. Not with the injuries, the youth, and the never-ending takes about how they just needed more time. Analysts penciled them in as fringe playoff hopefuls at best. And when Caitlyn Clark went down with a groin injury, the so-called experts didn't even bother sharpening their pencils. They closed the book on Indiana right there. But the Fever never got that memo. Instead of collapsing, they clawed their way through the toughest part of their season. Aliyah Boston started dominating the paint like she was back at South Carolina. Kelsey Mitchell reminded everyone why her nickname is Money Mitch. Odyssey Sims looked like she'd been waiting her whole career for this exact playoff run. And now, after all that grit and grind, Indiana finds itself in the WNBA Finals. That's already historic. But then came the announcement that took the entire sports world by storm. Caitlyn Clark herself confirming she will play in the finals. Understand how absurd that is for a second. The same media that insisted her year was over now has to backtrack. The same haters who laughed when she limped off the court now has to watch her come back on the league's biggest stage. Clark didn't just return. She returned in the moment where it matters most. This is more than a storyline. It's a power shift.
When she does come back, do you feel like...
I would not want to play the Indiana Fever, especially with a healthy Caitlyn. I mean, that building, I got a little taste of it last year. And doing the Final Four, shows when she's on the court, when someone can really change the game in a couple moments like she could be quiet for 10 minutes and then pop, pop, pop. It's 4 threes and the game's out of reach. And I think what the Fever are doing without her, that's going to help them in the future too, knowing that they can win a game when she's not on the court or she's not, at her best. So yeah, that Fever team, I would not want to play them with a healthy Caitlyn.
But here's where it gets really crazy. Clark's presence instantly transforms Indiana. Before she was hurt, the Fever weren't just competing. They were drawing record ratings, selling out arenas, and forcing every single opponent to game plan differently. Her shooting stretches defenses out to the parking lot. Her vision opens lanes for Boston and Mitchell. Her leadership raises the confidence of everyone wearing that Fever jersey. And now all of that is back. Let's not sugarcoat it. The haters are rattled. For months they've been chirping about how the league is bigger than Clark, how she can't handle the physicality, how she's not ready for the playoffs. They were giddy when she went down, but now they're in shock. Because Clark didn't just confirm she's playing, she confirmed she's suiting up in the finals. That's like dropping a live grenade into the middle of every rival fan base's living room. The timing couldn't be worse for Vegas or New York, the two so-called super teams. They were already sweating after Indiana bulldozed their way through the playoffs without Clark. Now they have to face a Fever squad that's not only fearless, but suddenly reloaded with the very player who changes the geometry of the game. It's not just about what Clark does on the stat sheet. Even if she's at 80%, her gravity shifts everything. Defenses can't ignore her. They can't collapse on Boston without paying the price. They can't send extra help on Mitchell without leaving Clark wide open. Every possession becomes a nightmare of choices, and none of those choices are good. Think about the psychological hit this delivers to the so-called powerhouses. They thought they dodged the bullet. They thought Clark was gone, out of sight, out of mind. Then Indiana proves they don't even need her to reach the finals. And just when those teams are bracing to face Boston, Mitchell and Sims alone, boom, Clark is back in the mix. That's demoralizing before the ball even tips. This is the part that will blow your mind. This wasn't just luck. Indiana played the long game, a masterstroke of strategy that nobody saw coming. The Fever only submitted 11 players for their playoff roster when the league allows 12. At the time, most people thought it was an oversight or just a depth issue. Now it looks like a carefully calculated gamble that paid off massively. That empty slot gave them flexibility. It kept the door cracked open for a dramatic return, and now Clark is walking right through it. That's the kind of foresight that tells you the Fever front office knew exactly what they were doing. They never fully ruled Clark out. They played coy, let the speculation swirl, and then dropped the bombshell at the perfect moment. That's not just strategy, that's pure showmanship on the biggest stage. Let's talk about the rules that made this possible. Under WNBA guidelines, playoff rosters lock once the regular season ends. No more hardship contracts, no more emergency signings. What you submit is what you ride with. But there's an exception: players under contract who are listed as inactive. whether from injury, suspension, or maternity leave, can technically be reactivated if a spot opens or if the team leaves a slot unfilled. That's exactly what Indiana did. Clark wasn't some random free agent. She was always part of the team, just waiting on the inactive list. And now the Fever are cashing in on that incredible gamble. What happens next defies all logic. Of course there are risks. Nobody's pretending groin injuries are easy. They linger, they flare up, they test your conditioning. The Fever are playing with fire by bringing her back, and they know it. But here's the thing, even a limited Clark still commands respect. You could put her on one leg, and teams would still guard her 25 feet from the basket. That kind of presence alone is worth the gamble. And make no mistake, this isn't just Indiana's decision. You better believe the league office has fingerprints all over this. The WNBA isn't blind. They know Clark's presence in the finals means eyeballs, revenue, and relevance like they've never had before. This isn't just basketball, it's business. And from a business standpoint, Clark coming back is pure gold. Fans feel that too. Social media is already exploding. Clips of Clark practicing are racking up millions of views. The announcement of her return got more traction than half the league's playoff games combined. Love her or hate her, everyone is talking about Caitlyn Clark. And for a league desperate to keep the national conversation alive, that's priceless. But let's not let the league off the hook either. The fact that praising Clark has gotten other coaches side-eyed or even allegedly cost jobs tells you everything about the fragile egos floating around. Clark is bigger than the WNBA right now, and that makes some people uncomfortable. Her return in the finals doesn't just spotlight her, it exposes the league's insecurities all over again. Everything you think you know is about to change. Still, the Fever don't care about politics, they care about winning. And with Clark back, their ceiling just went through the roof. Boston has more room to dominate inside. Mitchell can play freer on the perimeter. Sims doesn't have to carry as heavy a load. Even role players like Sophie Cunningham suddenly become more dangerous because defenses can't cover everyone. This is why opponents are terrified. The Fever already proved they could scrap and claw their way to the finals without Clark. Now they're adding back the most impactful player in women's basketball. That's not just scary, that's unfair. And the haters? They're officially out of excuses. For months they said Clark was overhyped, that she couldn't back it up against pros. Well, here she is, suiting up for the finals in her second year. Not limping in through the back door, not riding the bench as a cheerleader. Playing, competing, changing the entire dynamic of the series. It's almost poetic. The same people who spent the season downplaying her impact now have to watch her step right back into the spotlight on the grandest stage. The receipts are endless, and Fever fans are more than happy to pull them out. The real shock here isn't just that Caitlyn Clark is coming back, it's how perfectly timed this move is. Finals basketball isn't about regular season form or pretty stats. It's about making the moment bigger than your opponent can handle. And let's be real, Clark has lived in the spotlight since Iowa. Crowds, pressure, cameras, it's Tuesday for her. When you add someone with that kind of poise and gravity to the finals, you're not just adding a shooter or passer, you're adding a force that changes the environment before she even touches the ball. Vegas and New York? They just went from confident to paranoid overnight. This is just the beginning of this rabbit hole. Think about what this means for Indiana's core. Aliyah Boston, who's already bullying defenses on the block, now gets more single coverage. No more constant double teams. Kelsey Mitchell can actually breathe on the perimeter instead of being trapped every other possession. And Odyssey Sims, she can spend less energy creating and more energy disrupting. That's what Clark's presence unlocks. This isn't to say she'll play 35 minutes and drop 40 points. Nobody's expecting that. What matters is that she doesn't have to. Even 20 minutes of Clark shifts the math. Even just standing in the corner, she changes how defenses rotate. That's why her return feels like a plot twist written for television. Because it basically is. The WNBA is salivating right now. Finals without Clark? A solid storyline. Finals with Clark? A national event. Broadcasters are already prepping the graphics. Networks are clearing primetime slots. Casual fans who haven't watched a single regular season game are about to tune in just to see what happens. And that's the part that burns the haters most. Her return is bigger than them. The excuses are already loading up online. She's overrated, she won't be at full speed. Indiana will ruin chemistry by forcing her back in. Here's the thing. Those excuses don't matter when the scoreboard lights up. If Clark makes even a handful of impact plays in the finals, the entire conversation flips. Suddenly, the same critics are forced to explain how the overrated player just helped Indiana compete with the league's best. But here's the other side of the coin. The risk. Let's be blunt. If Clark comes back and looks rusty, the critics will pounce. If she re-injures herself, the narrative will be ruthless. That's why this move takes guts. Indiana could have played it safe, protected her for next year, and nobody would have blamed them. But instead they chose belief over caution. That decision says everything about how far this franchise has come. Because remember, not long ago the Fever were the league's punchline. 5 wins in a season, empty seats, lottery picks wasted. That team is gone. This team is fearless, bold, and not afraid to gamble on greatness. Bringing Clark back isn't desperation, it's confidence. They believe they belong here, and they believe Clark makes them unstoppable. And honestly, they might be right. Look at Vegas. They've been exposed more than once this postseason. Look at New York. They still figuring out chemistry with all those stars. Neither one of them looks invincible. Add Clark into Indiana's fight and suddenly those super teams don't look so super anymore. Now let's talk legacy. If Clark steps onto that finals court, even if she doesn't dominate, her return alone becomes one of the most iconic moments in league history. Think about it. Year 2 already fighting through injuries, already carrying a franchise, and now making a dramatic comeback on the biggest stage. That's the stuff of legend. Fans will remember it. Kids will copy it. The league will never live it down. And here's the kicker. Clark didn't need this for her reputation. She was already the face of the league. She was already selling jerseys and breaking ratings records. Coming back in the finals isn't about marketing. It's about sending a message. She's not just here for hype. She's here to compete, to win, to rewrite the script of a franchise everyone counted out. That's why the haters are in shock. Because the comeback they swore wouldn't happen is happening right in front of them, and there's nothing they can do about it.